Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they were waiting for the perfect moment to abandon you? When I woke up from surgery, weak and stitched together, I expected to see the woman I loved holding my hand. Instead, I found a note, and a silence that cut deeper than any scalpel. But what she didn't know was that walking out on me was the biggest mistake of her life. I never thought something as routine as a gallbladder removal would turn into the unraveling of my life. I was supposed to be in and out of the hospital within a few days, a minor procedure compared to what others endure. But complications set in. The surgery went longer than expected, and I woke up disoriented, in pain, with tubes in my arm and a dull fog blanketing my thoughts. Through the haze, I searched the room for her, for my wife, Emily, the woman I thought would never leave my side. The room was sterile, silent, except for the beep of the monitors. I waited, thinking maybe she'd just stepped out for coffee, or was checking in with the nurses. But hours passed and no one came. It was my nurse, not Emily, who handed me a folded note that had been left on the bedside table. I remember staring at it for what felt like forever, not wanting to open it, not wanting the weight of what it might say. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. It was short, just a few lines scribbled in haste. No apology, no explanation, just a blunt declaration that she needed to find herself, and that this life wasn't what she wanted anymore. I read it over and over, trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. She left while I was under anesthesia, while I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't even ask why. That moment, those few words, were more painful than the scalpel that cut into me. Emily and I had been married for 5 years. She was the kind of woman people admired, put together, charming, always knowing exactly what to say. And I was proud to be by her side. I worked hard, built a steady life for us. We had our little routines, coffee in the morning, movie nights on Fridays, long drives on weekends. To anyone looking from the outside, we were solid, unshakable. But I realized now that I was living in a carefully crafted illusion. I thought she was my rock, the person I could fall back on when life pushed me too hard. I saw her as my partner in every sense, until the moment I needed her most, and she vanished. Looking back, I see how much I projected stability onto her. I mistook her confidence for loyalty, her poise for strength. But she was never really built for commitment, just appearances. I ignored the times she dismissed my feelings, the way she avoided serious conversations. I thought love meant ignoring flaws and standing by each other regardless. I never imagined that she saw me not as a man to build with, but as a step on a staircase she planned to outgrow. The irony is that I worshipped her loyalty while she was busy planning her exit. I gave everything, time, energy, devotion, only to realize I was in a one-sided marriage. She wasn't my rock. She was my wrecking ball. It didn't happen all at once. The change was gradual, so slow and subtle that I barely noticed it until it became unbearable. At first, it was the missed text messages during the day. Then the excuses. Work's been crazy. I'm just tired. Don't overthink it. But the warmth in her eyes began to fade. The little touches, the small acts of affection, they dwindled like dying embers. I'd reach for her hand and feel her pull away. I thought it was stress, or maybe something I'd done unknowingly. So I tried harder. I planned surprise dinners, wrote notes, asked her how I could support her. She said everything was fine. She always said everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. There were moments when she looked at me like I was a stranger. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to find her sitting in the dark, staring at nothing, distant and cold. When I asked what was wrong, she just shook her head and went back to bed without a word. We stopped making plans. She stopped talking about the future. I kept telling myself we were just going through a rough patch. Every couple has those, right? But deep down, a small voice whispered the truth. She had already started leaving me long before she physically walked out the door. By the time my surgery date approached, Emily and I were barely speaking. Not out of anger, but something colder. Indifference. She stopped asking how I was feeling, stopped checking in on the pain I was constantly battling as my condition worsened. When I mentioned my fears about going under the knife, She just nodded absently and went back to scrolling on her phone. I was terrified, not of the surgery, but of the silence between us. It was suffocating. We were two people living in the same house, but occupying entirely different realities. The woman I once called my best friend now treated me like a distant acquaintance. What hurt the most was how calculated it all seemed. She didn't fight. She didn't scream or blame. She simply withdrew. It was as if she was quietly preparing herself to walk away and wanted to leave as little emotional debris behind as possible. I tried to confront her one night, desperate to bridge the gap between us, but she just smiled faintly and told me I needed rest. I didn't see it then, but that smile wasn't love, it was closure. She had already made up her mind. I went into surgery thinking things couldn't get worse. I was wrong. The silence I feared became permanent the moment I closed my eyes on that operating table. The day of my surgery, she barely said a word. She sat beside me in the waiting area, scrolling on her phone, nodding absently at the nurse's instructions, giving me a quick peck on the cheek before I was wheeled away. I held on to that kiss like a promise. It was supposed to mean she'd be there when I woke up, but when the anesthesia wore off and my consciousness clawed its way back, there was no warmth waiting for me, no familiar hand to hold, just an empty chair, a hospital tray, and a nurse who avoided eye contact when I asked about my wife. She didn't call. She didn't text. I asked every nurse, every orderly who came into the room if they'd seen her, and all I got were awkward shrugs and quiet apologies. That was when the nurse finally handed me the note. No goodbye, no visit, just ink on a crumpled piece of paper. The woman I loved had walked out of the hospital and out of my life without a second thought, leaving me to recover alone. It was like she'd been waiting for this moment, waiting until I couldn't protest, couldn't plead, couldn't stop her. And somehow, knowing that she chose this exact moment to leave made it all so much more cruel. Recovery was supposed to be hard, but I never imagined it would feel like a second form of surgery, this time on my soul. I couldn't get out of bed without help. Every movement sent sharp, burning jolts through my side. The painkillers made me dizzy, but the emotional pain was something no drug could dull. I lay in that hospital bed for days, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a person you gave everything to could vanish like that. I had to learn how to sit up, how to walk again, how to manage meals and medication, all without the person who was supposed to be there. When I finally got discharged, I had no one waiting for me. No ride home, no warm house with soup on the stove, just a cold, empty apartment that used to feel like home. Her things were gone. Half the drawers were empty, and the closet hung open like a wound. I collapsed onto the couch and let the silence swallow me. I should have been focused on healing, but all I could think about was her. Her absence haunted every corner of the apartment, and still there were no messages, no apologies, no explanations. Just an echo of a life I used to have, and the crushing weight of being left behind. It was a week after I got home when her first message came, not to check on me, not to apologize, but to ask about the rent. She wanted to confirm if I had paid my half. That was it. No mention of my health, my recovery, or the fact that she had abandoned me post-surgery, like discarded trash. I stared at the message, rereading it like it was a trick. Like somewhere between the lines she would confess that she made a mistake. But there was nothing there but cold, transactional indifference. That text was the final thread snapping in my chest, the last illusion tearing away. I responded with a single word, yes. And then I sat in that silence again, feeling the weight of years of love being reduced to financial obligations. I started scrolling back through our old messages, rereading years of affection, laughter, late-night conversations. It all felt like a different life, one where she loved me, or at least pretended well enough to fool us both. That message didn't just show me that she was gone. It showed me that she never really cared in the first place. You don't abandon someone mid-recovery if you ever truly loved them. That was the truth I didn't want to see, but now it stared me in the face. With nothing to do but heal, I turned inward, and then outward into the past. I started thinking back, not just about our marriage, but the small, easily missed signs that now screamed for my attention. The nights she came home late from work with vague explanations. The weekend she insisted on solo retreats to reconnect with herself. I'd always trusted her, given her space, because I believed in love without control. But lying in that bed, unable to sleep, I started wondering if I'd been blind. And so I began digging. Through old receipts, emails, credit card transactions, anything I could access. What I found made me sick. Hotel bookings I'd never heard about. Dinner bills for two in restaurants I'd never been to. Charges from stores I knew she didn't shop at with me. The betrayal unfolded like a cruel story written behind my back. I wasn't just abandoned. I had been replaced long before she walked out the hospital door. She didn't leave because she was lost or confused. She left because she had already found someone else. And the worst part, she was never going to tell me. She would have let me rot in that hospital bed believing she was just figuring things out. But I was done lying to myself. The truth hurt, but it gave me clarity. And that clarity lit the first spark of something I hadn't felt in weeks: anger. Once I was strong enough to sit upright for more than an hour, I retrieved the old tablet she used to sync her phone with, something she likely forgot about when she left. It was a long shot, but I was desperate to understand just how deep this betrayal ran. What I found shattered every remaining piece of the life we had built. The tablet was still logged into her cloud backup. Texts, call logs, images, they were all there. What began as a need for closure turned into a descent into the ugliest kind of truth. There were entire conversations with a man named Colin, stretching back months. Romantic, intimate, explicit. There were photos, some of them taken in our home, on our bed, while I was away on business trips. I couldn't breathe. It was like discovering that your life had been rewritten by someone else, and now you were reading the director's notes for the first time. She didn't just fall out of love. She plotted her escape. She planned it around my surgery, even texting him, "Once he's under, I'll finally be free." That one line almost broke me. She was waiting for me to be most vulnerable to cut herself loose. Not just betrayal, this was cruelty with timing. She could have left at any time. But she chose then, because it was easiest. Because she knew I couldn't fight back. Something inside me snapped, but it wasn't wild or loud. It was cold, focused. I realized that she hadn't just left me. She had humiliated me, lied to my face, while I built her the life she claimed to want. And while she was out building a new life with someone else, she assumed I'd just lay there and take it. But I wasn't going to let this be my ending. So I started documenting everything. I took screenshots of every message, every location pin, every photo that proved she was cheating and manipulating me for months, maybe even years. There was something deeply satisfying in regaining a sliver of control. I wasn't acting out of vengeance at first. It was survival. I needed to piece together what had happened, to build my own version of the truth she'd stolen from me. But the more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I found receipts showing she'd spent our joint savings on her little weekend getaways with him. She'd used my hard-earned money to cheat. That was the final nail. That's when it stopped being about closure and started becoming a mission. I didn't yell. I didn't send her angry messages. I just waited, calm, precise, and absolutely done playing the fool. I became obsessive, methodical. Every spare moment I wasn't in physical therapy or trying to cook myself a meal, I was documenting her betrayal. I logged every suspicious transaction, every suspicious time-stamped photo, every charge that linked back to those hotel stays and dinners. I contacted the hotels, posed as someone confirming prior stays for reimbursement, got invoices, found that she used our joint credit card on at least 2 different occasions for trips with him. She wasn't just cheating. She was reckless, lazy in her deceit, thinking I'd never notice. I printed everything, bound it into a neat file. Then came the financial records. I pulled our joint tax filings, our mortgage papers, any document that showed my earnings versus hers. I wanted it clear to any court that I had supported her while she was busy creating a second life. I even went through her social media, not for pictures, but for comments. Little flirty replies from Colin, mentions of weekend escapes. I archived them all. She thought she was clever, hiding everything in plain sight. But now I had a mountain of evidence. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to ruin the narrative she had told herself about being the victim, the one who outgrew our marriage. She wouldn't see me coming. Once I had all the evidence, I didn't confront her right away. I waited until I was fully healed, walking upright, dressing myself, eating real food without needing help. I made an appointment with a divorce attorney and laid out every shred of evidence on his desk. He leafed through the stack slowly, his face morphing from neutral professionalism to something close to amusement. "She's going to wish she had never left that hospital," he said, sliding the pile back toward me. And that's when strategy shifted. We weren't just filing for divorce. We were filing for everything. The apartment, the savings, and even damages for emotional distress based on financial misconduct. Then I sent her a message, short and sharp. I asked her to meet me for coffee, neutral ground. When she walked in, she looked surprised. Maybe she thought I was going to plead, or that I wanted closure. Instead, I slid the folder across the table and simply said, "This is what I found while you thought I was too weak to see the truth." She paled. She didn't touch the folder at first, just stared at it like it might explode. And when she did open it, flipping page by page, her face fell in slow motion. All the lies unraveled right there in that moment. And I just sat back calm, letting her feel the full weight of what she had done. Her silence then was the sweetest sound I had heard in weeks. She tried to play it off at first, claiming the messages were taken out of context, that the hotel stays were for self-care weekends. I didn't even respond. I just watched her unravel, page by page, lie by lie. When she realized I had timestamps, sync calendars, credit card records, and even photos of her with him, her bravado cracked. Her voice trembled as she asked what I wanted, and I told her nothing. I didn't want to save the marriage. I didn't want closure. I just wanted her to know that I knew everything, and that I had already filed for divorce. Her eyes widened. "You already filed?" she asked. I nodded. She tried to shift gears, cry, beg, even accuse me of violating her privacy. But it was too late. The mask had fallen. I told her the only thing I ever wanted was loyalty, not perfection. But what she did, that wasn't a mistake. It was a campaign of deceit. She walked out of that cafe stunned, shaken, with the folder clutched like a grenade. And I walked away lighter than I had felt in months. The divorce proceedings were brutal for her. I had the upper hand at every turn. My attorney presented our financial records like forensic audit. We proved she misused shared funds for personal indulgences and romantic trips. Her lawyer tried to argue emotional distress, but the receipts didn't lie. The judge was not amused. The settlement leaned heavily in my favor. I kept the apartment, the car, and the bulk of our savings. She got a clean break, and not much else. But even with the win, I wasn't celebrating. The damage had been deep. I wasn't just mourning a failed marriage. I was mourning who I used to be. The man who believed in unconditional love. That man had been burned to ash. In his place stood someone sharper, colder, and far less willing to give without question. The divorce wasn't closure. It was war, and I had survived it. Once the ink dried, I started clearing the apartment of her energy. Every photo, every scented candle, every drawer she once called hers. I got rid of it all. But it wasn't just physical things I reclaimed. I took back my mornings, my peace, my priorities. I changed my number, blocked her and her friends, and poured my focus into rebuilding. I found an old passion for photography and started spending weekends outdoors, framing moments through a lens instead of chasing affection from someone incapable of giving it. The more I rebuilt, the more I realized how much I'd lost myself in her. I had compromised on dreams, hobbies, even friendships just to make things work. Now, I wasn't just reclaiming space. I was reclaiming time and peace. I stopped apologizing for things I hadn't done and started showing up for myself in a way she never did. She thought she had taken everything when she walked away. She didn't realize she set me free. Months later, a mutual friend told me she and Colin had broken up. Apparently, he wasn't too thrilled when he realized she wasn't as fun without the thrill of the affair. She tried messaging me again, casual at first, then pleading. I ignored it all. But then came the kicker, a letter. Handwritten. Pages of apologies, regret, attempts to paint herself as lost, confused, mentally unwell during that time. She wanted to meet. She wanted to talk. So I mailed the letter back, with a copy of our divorce settlement clipped to it. No words. Just the legal proof of what her choices had cost her. That silence. That was my final blow. Not anger. Not insults. Just stone-cold distance. She had tried to burn me at my weakest. And now, strong again, I simply let her sit in the ashes she created. Healing wasn't a single moment. It was 100 little ones. Learning to walk again without wincing. Making breakfast in a quiet kitchen without longing. Waking up and not checking my phone for her texts. It was giving myself permission to grieve. To feel the betrayal without rushing into another relationship or distraction. I went to therapy. I journaled. I spent long walks in the park listening to music that reminded me of who I used to be before her. And slowly, I started to laugh again, to feel light, to be present. I realized healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let pain define you. Her leaving was brutal, yes, but it forced me to confront truths I had ignored for years, in a twisted way. Her betrayal gave me the clarity I was too blind to find on my own. And now, that clarity is my strength. It didn't stop with the letter. She tried running into me, accidentally, at places we used to frequent. She sent flowers, emails, even had one of her friends message me to say she was a different person now. I watched from a distance, amused and sad, not because I missed her, but because I pitied how little she understood. She thought she could return to a version of me that no longer existed, but I wasn't that man anymore. She even showed up at my doorstep once, tear-streaked, shaking, saying she had made the worst mistake of her life. I let her speak. Then, I closed the door without a word. No dramatic speech. No revenge fantasy. Just finality. She had her chance. She chose to leave when I needed her most. And now she would live with the knowledge that I thrived without her. Some people believe in second chances. I don't. Not when someone deliberately hurts you at your lowest. Her betrayal wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. It was calculated. She waited until I was unconscious, immobile, defenseless. That kind of person doesn't deserve a seat at your table once you've rebuilt it. Forgiveness? Maybe. In time. But reconciliation? Never. Shutting that door wasn't about pride. It was about boundaries. About survival. About protecting the man I had become. She may never understand it, but that's not my responsibility. Some doors are meant to close, permanently. And keeping them shut is sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself. Today, I look back not with bitterness, but with brutal clarity. I see a man who was broken and left to rot, and who clawed his way back to life inch by inch. I see someone who chose growth over resentment, truth over comfort, and solitude over fake companionship. I lost a wife, yes, but I gained something far greater myself. I've rebuilt a life that's quieter, steadier, and more honest. I know now what I'll never tolerate again. I trust slower, but love deeper, starting with myself. And as for her, she'll always be the woman who thought she left a broken man behind. But she actually helped create the strongest version of me I've ever known. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted most, you're not alone. Betrayal can break you, or it can build you into something stronger. What would you have done in my place? Do you believe people like that deserve forgiveness, or just the door? Let me know in the comments. And if this story hit home, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption.